failing startup became a billion-dollar empire in Sutadelapan months. The secret? A psychological shift that defies logic. This same pattern appears in every major business comeback from Apple to Lego. The shocking truth: 90% of business failures are due to a single cognitive bias that most founders ignore. We will reveal the hidden mechanism that turns failure into explosive growth. But first, let us rewind to the beginning, where everything seemed lost. Before the comeback, the entrepreneur faced near bankruptcy and public humiliation. The origin story: a childhood trauma that created a deep fear of failure. How this fear drove a pattern of self-sabotage and poor decision-making. The moment of rock bottom. Losing everything and the psychological breakdown that followed. A chance encounter with a mentor who introduced a radical concept: failure immunity. The first experiment. Applying this concept to a small side project that unexpectedly succeeded. The science behind failure immunity, neuroplasticity, and reframing setbacks as data. How the entrepreneur began to rewire their brain to embrace risk without fear. The hidden beginnings of the comeback. Not a strategy, but a mindset shift. This shift allowed the entrepreneur to see failure as a stepping stone, not a tombstone. The entrepreneur's masterstroke: creating a failure-friendly company culture, implementing a radical policy, celebrating failures in weekly meetings. How this policy unleashed creativity and innovation among employees. The psychological principle. Psychological safety leads to higher performance. Case study. How a failed product launch led to a breakthrough feature that doubled revenue. The masterstroke extended to customers. A risk-free guarantee that increased trust and sales. The hidden math. Reducing customer fear of loss increased conversion rates by 300%. The entrepreneur also applied the principle to investors, transparently sharing failures. Before the comeback, the entrepreneur faced near bankruptcy and public humiliation. Creditors called daily. Employees quit in droves. The origin story begins in childhood. A harsh teacher told him he would never succeed. That wound never healed. This fear of failure drove a pattern of self-sabotage. He rejected promising partnerships. He ignored market trends. Rock bottom came when he lost everything. His company folded. His marriage ended. He suffered a complete psychological breakdown. Then, a chance encounter at a coffee shop. A stranger noticed his despair and offered a radical concept: failure immunity. Failure immunity means seeing setbacks as data, not verdicts. It rewires the brain to treat failure as feedback. The entrepreneur tested this on a tiny side project. He launched a simple app with no expectations, failed fast. But instead of despair, he analyzed the data. He pivoted. The next version gained 1,000 users overnight. This success proved the science behind failure immunity. Neuroplasticity allows the brain to reframe setbacks as learning opportunities. He began rewiring his own brain. He embraced risk without fear. Each failure became a stepping stone, not a tombstone. The hidden beginnings of the comeback were not a strategy or a product. They were a profound mindset shift. He realized that the fear of failure had been the real enemy all along. Defeating it unlocked everything. This is just the beginning. Subscribe to see more amazing content. Fire. This single insight would soon transform his failing startup into a billion-dollar empire. But that story comes next. The hidden beginnings. Not a strategy, but a mindset. And it all started with a broken man and a stranger's words. The entrepreneur's masterstroke was not a product or a marketing campaign. It was a radical cultural shift. He decided to celebrate failures openly every single week. Every Monday morning, the entire company gathered. The goal was not to hide mistakes but to share them. The best failure won a prize. At first, employees were terrified. Admitting failure went against every instinct. But the CEO led by example, sharing his own embarrassing blunders. Slowly, the culture shifted. People stopped hiding errors. They started experimenting without fear. Creativity exploded. Psychologists call this psychological safety. It is the belief that you won't be punished for speaking up. Google's research proved it is the top predictor of high-performing teams. One failed product launch became a turning point. The feature was a disaster, but the team learned from the data and pivoted. The result? A breakthrough that doubled revenue. The entrepreneur extended the same principle to customers. He introduced a risk-free guarantee. If customers were unhappy, they got a full refund, no questions asked. This removed the fear of loss. Customers felt safe to try the product. The hidden math was simple. Reducing fear increased trust. Conversion rates soared by 300%. Investors were next. The entrepreneur shared failures transparently in board meetings. He showed them exactly what went wrong and what was learned. This honesty built unprecedented loyalty. Investors appreciated the candor. They doubled down on their support. Top talent also flocked to the company. The masterstroke was not a single action. It was a system that turned fear into fuel. Every failure became data. Every mistake became a lesson. The company's innovation skyrocketed. New products launched faster. Employee satisfaction hit record highs. The culture became the ultimate competitive advantage. But the entrepreneur knew this was fragile. The system required constant reinforcement. One slip back to fear-based management could undo everything. He implemented a failure audit every quarter. Teams reviewed what went wrong without blame. They celebrated the lessons learned. The system became self-sustaining. The masterstroke transformed the company. It was no longer just a business. It was a laboratory for growth. And the entrepreneur had unlocked the secret. Embrace failure to succeed. Success bred complacency. The entrepreneur stopped practicing failure immunity, the very mindset that built the empire. A major market shift caught the company off guard. A new competitor emerged, and revenue plummeted by 50%. The board demanded a return to safe strategies. They wanted predictable profits, not risky innovation. The entrepreneur's old fear resurfaced. Paralyzed by the threat of failure, he made indecisive, reactive choices. Employees felt the shift. The culture of transparency eroded as people began hiding mistakes to avoid blame. The fall came swiftly. A public scandal erupted when a hidden failure was exposed, tanking the stock price. The psychological trap had sprung. The more successful we become, the more we fear losing it all. The entrepreneur hit rock bottom again. But this time, he had far more to lose. Employees, reputation, legacy. The crisis forced a choice. Revert to old, safe ways or double down on the original mindset that sparked the comeback. But first, let's take a quick break. Check out the Terima TWS gaming earbuds for incredible sound and comfort. Click the link in the description to grab yours at an unbeatable price. Now back to the story. The entrepreneur's old patterns of self-sabotage threatened to destroy everything he had built. He knew that to survive, he had to confront the fear that had driven him to this point. The entrepreneur chose to rebuild from the ground up, starting with a personal failure audit. This meant cataloging every mistake, no matter how painful. The audit revealed a pattern. Each failure was a stepping stone, not a tombstone. This insight became the foundation of a new framework. He called it anti-fragility, a system that grows stronger under stress. Unlike resilience, which merely bounces back, anti-fragility thrives on chaos. The company adopted this mindset. Every setback was analyzed for lessons, not blamed. Mistakes became data, not disasters. Within 2 years, revenue not only recovered but doubled. The company became more resilient than ever, immune to the fear that once paralyzed it. The entrepreneur now teaches this framework globally. Thousands of businesses have adopted the anti-fragility model, transforming their own cultures. The ultimate lesson is simple. The secret to every business comeback is not avoiding failure, but mastering it. Failure is a teacher, not a judge. The psychological payoff is profound. True success comes from embracing vulnerability and uncertainty. When you stop fearing failure, you become unstoppable. This mindset shift can be applied to any area of life. Relationships, health, creativity, all benefit from the courage to fail forward. The entrepreneur's legacy is not a company, but a philosophy, a blueprint for turning fear into fuel and failure into foundation. In the final scene, the entrepreneur speaks to a packed auditorium. The crowd is silent, hanging on every word. He asks the question that changed everything. What would you do if you weren't afraid to fail? The room erupts in realization. That question is now the cornerstone of a movement. Millions have asked it, and their answers have reshaped industries. The legacy endures. Every business comeback begins with one choice: to see failure not as an end, but as the beginning of something greater. Welcome. Before we begin, hit subscribe so you don't miss our daily updates. Bell subscribe now before the next video. We have a special upload tomorrow. High voltage.